Good afternoon and welcome to an NYNJPA weather productions of Storm Watch for the week of August 9th, 2010. This is going to be a weekly video that you could see on the free section of the NYNJPA weather website or on YouTube. So basically what we're going to be discussing is the forecast for the week ahead, what to expect, and a little bit of a sneak peek into what premium members get to see every day. So let's start out with the current map right now. We have a high pressure system to the south and southeast of the northern mid-Atlantic. Northern mid-Atlantic, by the way, includes the New York City and Philadelphia metropolitan area. So this high pressure system is sitting to the south and is producing a southwesterly wind that is driving in hot humid air into the northern mid-Atlantic. Temperatures right now are in the lower 90s over many locations and dew points are around 70. So clearly it's not a very comfortable conditions out there, especially compared to this past weekend. Now on the radar, we have a few interesting sky showers and thunderstorms over New England and over the eastern Great Lakes. These showers and thunderstorms are the result of disturbances that are remaining well to the north of the northern mid-Atlantic, and when we look at the water vapor, we can see those disturbances moving through and a very, very strong upper level low that's sitting over Quebec. It's rather unusual for this time of year to have such a strong upper level low, but there's a reason why that the trough is becoming so amplified. Now, when we look at the 500 millibar pattern from 12Z this morning, which is roughly around 7 a.m., what we have is a strong upper level low around Quebec. Now, this is very important to keep an eye on. When we have a strong upper level low around Quebec, around the Canadian Maritimes, what we have is what's called a negative NAO pattern. Notice the ridge is building up over Greenland. This is what you call a west-based negative NAO pattern. When you have your upper level low a little bit further to the east around Iceland and your ridge is just barely pushing into the coast of Greenland, that's an east-based negative NAO pattern. Keep an eye on that because that's going to be very important as we move through the week. Now also notice we have a lot of disturbances that are rotating around this upper level low. Now the northern mid-Atlantic is right on the edge of influence of this upper low. And as a result, the lifting isn't really all that impressive. However, it is strong enough to bring a threat of an isolated shower or thunderstorm today, tomorrow afternoon, and Wednesday afternoon. So keep an eye on that, especially if you're in the Hudson Valley or around Connecticut. Some of those disturbances can produce severe thunderstorms, and they can produce them in a hurry without much warning. Now looking at the forecast as we head into Wednesday night, notice that upper level low is moving more towards the east. In fact, we have a weakness all the way out in the Atlantic. What is that caused from? That, ladies and gentlemen, is what's left of Colin. Now, it's not directly because of Colin, but basically what we have here is because of the entrainment of moisture and latent heat energy, this trough is becoming more enhanced. Now, because it's becoming more enhanced, the northwesterly flow over New England is also a little bit stronger, and that means a backdoor cold front. So instead of temperatures remaining in the mid-90s and lower 90s over the northern mid-Atlantic, backdoor cold front drops down first through New York and then through Philadelphia by Thursday morning. Temperatures end up being a lot cooler, lower to mid-80s, with a lot lower humidity, with the risk of showers and thunderstorms, than if the trough was weaker and you didn't have that influence of tropical moisture and energy into the trough. If it wasn't for Colin, we'd be hot all week. But because of Colin, changes the game. Now, as we move into the weekend, notice that we start getting a trough that's diving down into the northern plains. The pattern's starting to shift. We're starting to develop more of a neutral NAO pattern, in which what that means is that we're losing our ridge around Greenland, we're losing the blocking. There's still some weakness over the Canadian Maritimes, but it's not allowing the pattern to block up. Meanwhile, we have a trough starting to dig down into the plains, and our warm air that was suppressed is now able to flood back into New England. So the cooler conditions that we see on Thursday and Friday, it's not going to last. And the reason why is because now we have more of a southwesterly flow from the surface all the way up to 850 millibars and then up to 500 millibars of westerly flow. So all that warm air comes running right back into the northern mid-Atlantic, And then by next week, we can see a deep trough that's sitting over the northern plains, but notice where the trough axis is. Trough axis is over the Mississippi River Valley, which produces a southwesterly flow all the way up through the northern Mid-Atlantic, which means it's hot, it's humid, and it's stormy, because now you have disturbances trying to move from the Ohio Valley and Tennessee Valley up towards the northern Mid-Atlantic and New England, and it's going to be a rather active time for severe weather once again as we move into the weekend and into next week. Now, the reason why this is really important to keep an eye on, and I discussed this in depth in the premium discussions, is that the tropical disturbances that develop in the Atlantic are going to have a very important impact on these troughs. If you have a tropical storm or hurricane starting to move into the northern Atlantic, it's going to enhance the trough around Iceland and around the Canadian Maritimes, and that produces your west-based negative NAO block. And if that happens, then the trough that's over the northern plains and around the Great Lakes and central Canada, that ends up being weaker, and you end up with more of a potential for a backdoor cold front. So it's going to swing back and forth depending on the influence of the tropics. In the meantime, the Pacific is going to remain in a fluctuating state as La Nina continues to gain a hold and influence throughout the Pacific, and as a result, the northern hemispheric pattern. But it looks like we're definitely moving into more of a La Nina type pattern. For example, what we have here is a positive EPO pattern, very much similar to what we see in a La Nina type pattern. The reason why we have a ridge so strong along the west coast, though, is that the wavelengths in the summer are shorter, and as a result, you get a potential where you get more of trough ridge, rather than a large trough and then a ridge more towards the east or the plains. So just keep an eye on that, and remember that for the winter. Just because we see this right now does not mean it's going to be cold in the winter. Discuss that also in the premium discussions with the long range forecast. Now, going down to the tropics, a few things, because the tropics are so important, especially in our pattern going forward. We have one disturbance that's over the Bahamas that's going to be moving into the eastern Gulf of Mexico. Keep an eye on that. That could be trouble for Louisiana. I don't think we're going to see a hurricane or anything like that out of it, but it's going to be a nuisance nonetheless. Our best chance for a tropical depression is sitting out over the central Atlantic. This one as well has potential to develop, has plenty of convection around the low-level center, but will likely get picked up by a trough. Pick that up, right? Now that could be an interesting influence on the pattern going forward that the models currently are not picking up. So I would not be surprised if we see another backdoor cold front starting to try to work its way south that the models are not picking up at 240 hours, but likely will once we move closer to that time period. So the middle of next week might be something to keep an eye on. Moving way out into the Atlantic off the African coast, see that disturbance to the south of the Cape Verde Islands? Basically, if you're not sure what the Cape Verde Islands are, look where that red blotch is that's on the clouds there. That is a disturbance that has a well-defined mid-level circulation. Don't know yet if it has a low-level circulation, but it certainly has plenty of convection, and it's under favorable conditions and plenty of warm water. I would keep an eye on that disturbance over the next couple of days. I would not be surprised by sometime next weekend that we have a tropical depression on our hands and possibly a tropical storm. Well, that's it for today and for this week for the discussions. If you are interested in becoming an NYNJPA member, basically what we have is, well, basic membership, which is free. It's you get a monthly newsletter. You get also enrolled in a newsletter that has new updates every 3 days about weather tips and the latest weather alerts for the region. And if you're interested in the premium discussions, we have several different tiers depending on your economic position. Anywhere from $9.99 a month, basically $10 a month to save on the cost of your business, or if you're just interested in the weather, to platinum, which is $50 per year, which is less than 14 cents a day. It's a pretty good value. I would jump on it if you have the opportunity. There's also basic and advanced consultation if you're interested. You can visit nynjpaweather.com and that link at the bottom over there. for more information on consultation and on membership. Have a great afternoon, and I'll see you next week.